Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we have uncensored conversations, we exchange information, we provide a ton of resources for all the listeners. I want to thank you for joining us. This podcast is streaming on all major platforms. Everywhere you get your favorite podcast, we are there, including Audible. I just found that out a few weeks ago. And so we're going to have a different show today, but it's still focused on the same stuff that we talk about in every podcast. We cover four topics under the umbrella of public health, specifically mental health challenges and crisis. Those are domestic violence, human and sex trafficking, sexually based offenses, and finally, missing persons, which we end each show with a missing person case. If anybody's triggered during this podcast, please call 911. That's your first point of contact because your fire medic CEO brother LP is not going to show up. I guess Marcella's not going to show up, and in all seriousness, contact 911. That starts the documentation process, that starts all of the alphabet people that need to get involved, and it starts all of your resources to get help and assemble. If you don't have an immediate need for 911, but you still need help, in the audio and the video portion of this podcast, we have a number of resources listed: domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking. We have for people that have substance abuse issues, and that includes alcohol and or drugs. We have Al-Anon for the supporters of loved ones that have these issues. We have Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. And we also provide the new 911 number for suicide issues. That's 988. It was just made available nationwide this past Saturday, July 16, 2022. I've been talking about that for months now. And now I'm seeing people post it on their social media like it's all brand new. I'm like, where y'all been? Because I've been posting this stuff for months. And I mean literally for months now, Marcello. It's just crazy when I'm looking at it. People like, oh my God, we didn't know this was coming out. I'm like, okay, whatever. So that being said, again, if you're triggered at any point, we have all the resources available for you. We're going to have a very great conversation today with my friend, my sister. Her name is Marcella Gonzalez. And let me change the screen around a little bit because I want to get her beautiful face on the screen. I'm going to stop the screen share here. I'm going to bring her up in front and center. My friend Marcella,
Hi.
she does something a little different for those that have issues with trauma, specifically if we're talking about domestic violence, if we're talking about sexual violence, if we're talking about trafficking. Marcella Gonzalez is an
Mm.
intuitive and enigmatic, am I saying it right? Enigmatic,
Enigmatic.
enigmatic. I'm just getting tongue tied because I'm just so excited. Enigmatic reader with over 30 years experience reading tarot cards and helping
Yes.
people with communicating with spirits. So she deals with tarot cards, crystals. She has a business with her daughter, and they sell these crystals and they do readings. She just did a reading with me prior to this podcast. And we're just going to jump into how these modalities that I talk about all the time when it comes to therapy, not getting on somebody's couch for 45 minutes doing the Q&A, that doesn't work for everybody. CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which is awesome, which is a step up from just laying on somebody's couch, that might not work for somebody. EMDR, which is great for traumas, phenomenal for traumas. Some people may not be ready for that because that's something that I know personally in my family. There are some members that are doing EMDR, and it's been life changing,
Right.
but they had to get ready for that. This is a little different. We're going to be talking about tarot cards. We're going to be talking about crystals. We're going to be talking about witches. We're going to break down all of the myths because y'all know your brother. I always say we got to get rid of the stigmas, the stereotypes, and the taboos associated with not only mental health crisis, which is the world's oldest continuous pandemic, by the way. You've heard me say that many times, right,
Yeah.
Marcella?
Yes, yes, I have.
We're going to dispel all of these myths when it comes to witches, tarot card readings, crystals, all of these things, and how they play a part in helping people heal from sexual-based offenses, domestic violence, trafficking, and other things. Marcella Gonzalez, welcome to the
Hey.
True Point Talk
Hi,
podcast.
LP.
What's
Yeah,
going on?
thank you. Thank you for having me. How are
You
you?
know, I'm doing great, and this has been something that I've really been thinking about. As we talked before,
Yep.
I'm somebody who I'm either the only guy or one of a handful of guys that come into these mental health conversation
Yep.
spaces on Clubhouse or other social media platforms, and that's okay because I'm comfortable in my own skin,
All right.
and my heart doesn't bleed Kool-Aid. So I'm like I'm always ready. I'm always ready, and I'm
Yeah.
an Aquarius, so we're metaphysical just by nature. We're just metaphysical by nature. So I've interviewed a ton of people who are metaphysicians, who are Reiki
Mm-hmm.
practitioners,
Yep.
who do NLP, neurolinguistic programming. I did a EFT session on one of my interviews. The tapping,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was my third interview I did. She showed me how to do that. I've done a breathwork session on
Yeah.
one of my podcasts. You know, I'm all about metaphysics. I used to call myself a metaphysician, some years ago, but I had no clue on all the different modalities that are associated with mental health. And so I want us to talk about what you do. And we're just going to start off by introducing you, and you're going to have the mic, and you're going to talk about how you got into this stuff. You're going to talk about why these things are important for you. We're going to dispel some of these myths.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how what you do has absolutely nothing to do with demology, with
Demonology.
demonology. That's it. Oh, forgive my forgive my forgive my country grammar. I'm from St. Louis. So demonology. We're going to dispel how you don't deal with pentagrams and all that other stuff or whatever. That's a whole nother conversation. It has nothing to do with what you do.
Actually, it's part of this conversation.
I
Yeah.
stand corrected.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the mic. Tell us about who you are.
All right. Well, I'm Marcella. And when people ask me, who are you? The first thing I say is, well, that's a good question because I'm still finding me.
Hmm.
I'm a mom, I have children. And there are a lot of different aspects to my children as well, which I feel are a huge part of make me who I am as, in the world. I work very hard at being a good mom. So one of the things that I did was my 10-year-old daughter, when she turned 8, I took her to believe it was Disney World. We went to Epcot and we got on a ride. And when we got home, I remember her scouring through the internet. And I finally said, what are you doing? And she shows me a picture of the Northern Lights. And she's like, what is this? And I said, oh, it's the Aurora Borealis. And she says, I need to see that in person. I need to go there.
Wow.
And yeah, that was 2 years ago. That was February of 2020. And I said to her, well, mommy cannot afford a trip like that because I was still in that scarcity mindset, that I said, I cannot afford a trip like that. And it's just me. There's nobody else to pay bills and take someone on vacation. That last vacation was a splurge. We had saved up years to take
Sure.
her, yeah, for Christmas and her birthday. So she says to me, well, what do I need to do to get the money? And I said, oh, you get a job. What does an 8-year-old know about working? And she says, okay, I will. And I said, sure. And I figured maybe she'd do stuff with my neighbors, maybe walk the dog, or I don't know. And a couple of months later, we're in lockdown. And she comes to me and she says, mommy, I want to sell crystals. And everything was telling me, everything in here, just in here, say no. You can't do it. You've got too much on your plate. You work a 12-hour shift. You've got your tarot clients. You've got other things. And I just looked at her face and I said, okay, let's do it. So I did what I could. I researched, I borrowed money from everyone that I knew, and we bought supplies. And then we started our live sales on Instagram, and that was it. That's how we began. So everything in here, in my heart, was telling me, do this for her and do it for yourself. You need this, and it's going to change you. I knew it, just didn't know how. I didn't know how it was going to change us. So now the tarot, see, I have them in my hand. they're always in my hand wherever I go.
Okay.
And I realized it's because I am neurodivergent. So I'm on the autism spectrum, and I
Okay.
used to stim. I used to use my fingers to count things, and
Okay.
I didn't realize that now. And I've always had tarot, always had tarot. But one day I picked them up and I just started shuffling and I felt at ease. And I
Okay.
said, okay. Now, that wasn't my first deck. I got my first deck when I was 15. But this, it all of a sudden it made so much sense. Instead of tapping on things to make myself feel better, now I've just got to shuffle. And it's a stimming that I'm doing. This is stimming.
So it's still
Uh,
some similar to EFT in a
It
sense.
it it is kind of, because I do tap, like I'll tap my shoulder, or sometimes I will, if you're saying something, I will literally count what the words you're saying with my fingers.
Okay.
It's something that comforts me here, and one of my other children does that. So what I do for individuals with struggling with mental health, and it's such a broad spectrum.
Mhm.
There are people who come to me and say, they ask questions, and I pull tarot, and they'll say, I don't know where this is coming from. And I'll say, this is possibly something from your childhood. And I developed this program for myself about 15, 20 years ago. It's about 20 years now. And about 15 years ago, I remember a friend asked me what I was doing. And I said, oh, I journal every day. And she looked at my book and she says, that's not journaling. Like, you're just like jotting down notes. And I said, well, I journal my way, you journal your way.
That's right.
And she said, well, show me what you're doing. So we did this together. And I remember that in a month's time, she came to me and she says, I cannot believe all the things that have come up for me and that I feel differently about with this process. And I said, well, it's been working for me. Now, there is nothing that is going to cure everyone overnight. We all are working through our challenges every day. And if we can find something that works for us, then this is something that we put into practice and we do on a regular basis. Therapy is great. I always recommend to people, if you are having challenges, with mental health, therapy, psychiatry, this is great. Now, what I do is a little bit different. And people will say, when I say, oh, we got to do shadow work on you, they get all verklempt, and it's, oh my God, what do you mean? That sounds so evil. It's not. And I'm going to explain to you what shadow work is. So, shadow work is basically, let's say your childhood home is being vacated, LP, and you
Okay.
need somebody to go clean out everything and decide, well, like, you've got antique furniture and you've got clothing. You need someone to go in and just like make sure everything is either able to be kept or sold.
Okay.
And yeah, so you'll pay me to go into this home. And once I'm there, I can call you and say, LP, you got to come up here and look at this. Let's go to your attic. And you're going to say, well, I didn't know there was an attic. So we go up
Okay.
into the attic and it's super dark. And I've got the torch, the lantern, the
Mhm.
flashlight. And we're going to walk around into every little corner. And I'm going to shine that light and I'm going to say, oh, look, what about this? And you're going to say to me, wow, I've forgotten about that. So now we can rummage through it and we can see whether or not this is something that you're going to want to release or keep. Some people thrive on their memories. Some of them want to release these memories. And that's what I do. I walk you through the process of either keeping them in a safe place or just releasing them.
Okay.
Yep. As far as pentagram, I only want to bring it up because I thought that was funny that you mentioned that. Pentagrams, if you look at them with the point on top,
Mhm.
they represent um, earth, wind, fire, water, and
Water.
spirit.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what they stand for, the five elements.
The five elements.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
movie.
Mm, not really, sort
I
of.
really,
The fifth, she was the fifth element.
she
In
was the fifth
in
element.
in spirituality, the fifth element is spirit.
Okay.
Yeah. So wearing a pentagram just means that you're in tune with the five elements, with the four corners, and with your own spirit. Now, if it's inverted, that's
That
different.
that's when the conversation changes. Okay.
That's when it
So
changes. Yeah.
that's why I wanted to have you on because I had heard that, but I wasn't sure about that. And I'm like, I need to have a subject matter expert educate me about that. And again, we don't deal with stigmas, taboos, and stereotypes. We deal with facts and professional opinions also,
Yep. Yep.
but we also want to educate people on, you know, hey, if this is junk, that's junk. If that's something that I don't touch, I don't touch, and I want to tell
Yep.
you why. If this is something that can help you, here's the information. And that's all we want to do. We want to give you the
Hmm.
information, and what you do with it is what you do with it. You can throw it away, you can accept it, you can, do
Exactly.
whatever to help you be a better person and deal with
Right.
whatever comes. I want to jump into one other thing before we get into how your work deals with trafficking,
Okay.
domestic violence, and sexual traumas, how you help survivors
Yep.
of those.
Of course.
Let's define a couple of things since we're talking about pentagrams and
Okay.
demonologists.
Okay.
Define witch.
It, see, that's another thing. The word witch can mean so many different things.
Okay.
Now, let's go back a few centuries before there were doctors.
Mhm.
Okay. And you had people who mixed herbs and tinctures and other things for,
Apothecary.
an apothecary. There you go, an apothecary. So a witch is that's also such a broad spectrum because a witch can either be an apothecary or they could be a person who creates things in the kitchen for us to feel better to eat. And that's, there's so many different aspects of her. There are other witches who will create things on a loom or through glass, and they're very artistic. There are witches who will make mugs for drinking coffee. There are witches who will create shawls. And what we do is while we're creating these things, we infuse good energy. So
Okay.
while, and it's like Reiki. Think
Okay.
about having
Great.
Reiki, but
Gotcha.
putting it into a physical thing and then giving it to a person. And this is, and you give it to them with well intentions so that the shawl will keep them comforted, the
Okay.
cup of coffee will feel good going down. I mean, there's so many different things. I don't like to define the word witch. I like to think of it as it's just another name for someone who heals,
Okay.
someone who provides comfort to the world, someone who worships the earth. And there are different names for that too. You've got the pagans,
Mhm.
and there were many more before them. Um, there's a shaman. Shaman. I would consider myself more a shaman than anything else, but I've been called a witch and I don't mind. I don't have green skin, I don't melt when you throw water on me.
I'm laughing because Mrs. LP and I and our daughter, in St. Louis, we went to the Fox Theater
Mhm.
and we saw Wicked.
That
It was a phenomenal,
was I was referencing
phenomenal,
that.
phenomenal. If you haven't seen Wicked, go see it. I'm telling you, it talks about the story of how the bad witch
The
became the
Wicked
bad,
Witch of the West. Yeah.
the wicked witch of the.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
phenomenal, phenomenal play. Will you define Wicca also? Because I got a bunch of things I got written down here.
Um, what have you got written down about Wicca?
I just wrote the word. I said I'm just gonna write down the words, and I want you to define. So we talked about which. I got Wicca, wizard, witchcraft,
Well,
and then
yeah,
you
there you
talked about
go.
shamans, and you talked about apothecary. So
So a Wicca is just like Christianity. It's a religion. So you
okay,
practice Wicca. Now wizards, it's a name for a male witch. However, the word witch is gender neutral. You
okay,
can call a man a witch,
okay,
um, which most people don't know or get. Um, most people associate it with negativity. They associate lots of these things with bad words. Once you hear shaman, though, all of a sudden it's, oh, wait. Now, there are Native American women and men who are considered elders and spiritual people, spiritual guides, and medicine women,
medicine.
medicine man, yeah.
Mhm.
And these individuals are technically witches.
Okay,
Yeah. So I love telling people, my children tell their friends I'm a witch, and then I just stop telling them not to say it.
Oh,
It's so
the other
yeah.
word I had was a warlock.
Okay, so now warlock has more of a negative connotation. Now warlock, most people would say that is an evil witch,
Okay.
but a male witch.
A male evil witch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's funny because I wanted to bring up the word sorcerer.
Sure.
There are tribes that call themselves sorcerers, and it's
Okay.
because they feel that they can manipulate things like the air, the fire, all the elements, as well as animals. So the word sorcerer also is been given, it's been given a bad rap, and it's just a word. It really is
Okay.
just a word. Yeah.
You mentioned an individual, Marie Laveau. Can you tell us
Now,
about her?
yeah, Marie Laveau was a Christian woman, and she was very, very devout in the church, in her faith, and she was an apothecary. She used to create herbs, and it's like, how you go to the pharmacy and they're mixing stuff together and they'll put it in bottles, shake it up. So this is exactly what she would do, but she was catering to women in her community.
Okay.
So if a woman had an abusive husband and she didn't want to sleep with him, sometimes Marie would give her a sleep powder, something to put in his drink.
Okay.
If the woman didn't want to get pregnant because maybe they had too many kids and they couldn't afford another one, or they had maybe the husband was abusive and would force himself on her, then she would give her this concoction that would keep her from producing. So she was
Okay.
very admired, and she was loved. She was loved in her community. I don't know a lot about her. I just know that my grandma had a statue of Marie in her bedroom, and I ask people all the time and they tell me, no, no, I remember her. I
And
remember the statue. And yeah.
what time frame was she around?
Marie
Was this like
Laveau.
the 1800s or
Yeah, yeah, I believe
okay,
so. Yeah.
1800? Okay. And what part of the country or world was she in?
Oh, in New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing about her was, the reason they thought she was a witch, she had several daughters, and she named them all Marie, and they all look like her. So while she was getting older, her daughters would go out to the market and people would think it was her, and they
Okay.
thought she never aged. And they would see her in two different places at one time, so they assumed she was transporting herself. Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh yeah, I'm going to defy the laws of physics back here in the 1800s in New Orleans. Like, okay, yeah. Yeah, this is not Star Trek, folks. We don't have teleporters and all this stuff or whatever. Now, you told me that you're a very religious person.
Yeah.
And, for the listeners and the people that are going to be watching this on video, again, I wanted us to just get all of that out so we can understand where we're going to go to next. Because
Okay.
again, there's a lot of misconceptions about tarot, crystals, witches, and all of those things. I just wanted to clear the air so we can move on to the next topic. Now, you deal with clients that have been traumatized.
Yeah.
And on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, and again, we're getting ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this interview. So
Yeah.
if you're triggered at any point, call 911 or contact one of the hotlines that we'll have listed in the show notes. And this podcast is being sponsored by Anchor, produced by Pending Consulting Solutions LLC. Now, trafficking, domestic violence, sexually based offenses, how do you connect that with shadow work?
Well, first I wanted to go back, if you don't mind. You
All
said
right,
I'm very
do it.
religious. Yeah, I was raised Catholic,
Okay.
and I love church. I love going to a church and sitting and just listening. Um, I was baptized as a baby, and I truly admire any structure that teaches love and compassion. So when I go to a church and I listen, if the conversation is about loving our, not just ourselves, but other individuals for no reason, then I'm
Absolutely.
there. Yeah. So yes, I'm very Catholic. I still use rosary beads, and I do the rosary prayers, the Hail Marys.
Mhm.
Um, and I read tarot. And a lot of people think I've had people come to me and see me with the tarot and then walk away. And I say, what's wrong? And that's devil's work. It's not devil's work. It is
Really?
not devil's work. Yeah. Actually I had someone come to me. So one of my clients say, someone asked me not to go to your rooms on Clubhouse. And I said, why? Well, because you're doing devil's work. And I said, oh, okay. Well, at the end of the month, I'm going to sacrifice you to my pagan god. I said, that doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. So
Let me,
incidentally,
hey, I remember I got married in 2019.
okay,
So this is my third marriage, but I've been married to only two people. So the first two marriages, I married my ex-wife, who's the mother of our kids. And
okay,
so we got married twice. When I got married the third time to Mrs. LP, I remember, and her dad's a retired pastor and minister. I'm sorry.
mhm,
Uh, and so I remember she said the only thing he said to her was, you know, make sure he's not Catholic, which is so funny because I'm not Catholic, but as a kid from first grade through sixth grade, I went to a Catholic
school.
elementary school,
Yeah.
St. Martin de Porres.
Oh wow.
And people don't know that St. Martin de Porres was a black man, black Latino man from Lima, Peru.
Okay.
And he was beautified. And this was, I think this was 1600s or so, but this was just centuries ago. And this was a primarily all black school on the west side of St. Louis, you know, and it was just amazing that experience, that education that I got, you know. So, but I'm not Catholic, and I was baptized in a missionary Baptist church as an adult.
Okay.
So I just want to get that out there or whatever. So here
Okay.
we are, two people that have been either in Catholicism or
Yeah.
Christianity, and we're talking about crystals and tarots and all this other stuff. So domestic violence, trafficking, and sexual
Yeah.
traumas.
So, so the program that I run, it's all about inner child healing and shadow work.
Okay.
And I actually have a client who is, she is a trafficking victim.
Okay.
And when I met her, I asked her, she had some readings from me, and she asked me, was there something she could do that could maybe, along with her therapy, and I always put emphasis on that. Please, if you're seeing a therapist, continue to see them. Along
Absolutely.
with the therapy, if I thought there was anything that she could do to help herself, and I said absolutely.
Mhm.
So when she signed up for the program, I think she was a little apprehensive, and I said to her, this is going to be one of the easiest things you do for you.
Mhm.
It's a minimal amount of journaling with questions that make you really think. And while some of them might be a little triggering, and I always tell them, well, let's have a talk. We can have a talk privately, because we also do a Zoom session with the entire group.
Okay.
Um, and it's a very small group. I never do more than six people in one setting. I never have more than six people in one setting. She started to see how she could release certain things. And with her therapist's help and with my program, she says that she has come such a long way. I wish that I could get her here just to talk about this. She's an amazing woman. She's still going through some personal things
Okay.
with the trafficker and court. So I don't want to give any of her information out. It's personal. And I believe in HIPAA too. I believe in that.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
So, but
licensed
I
as a medic, so yeah.
but I can tell you that I have seen a lot of progress in her
Okay.
and in just her overall demeanor. And when she's not good, she's able to now say, I'm not good today.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things I do. I help you all to learn how to be better communicators for yourself, for your family, your partners in general. I also help you learn how to be a better listener. You can hear what people are saying and not immediately jump to respond, but listen.
How do you
So,
do that?
how do we do it? Okay. So, one of the things I encourage doing our sessions. So, let's say we're having a session right now, is you've had the most awful day. and you call me. And one of the first thing I say is, okay, LP, so we're not going to trauma dump. You're going to tell me how you're feeling. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen. And that's what I do. I sit and listen. And then I don't try to fix you. There's no way I can fix you. This all
Right.
comes from within ourselves. So
Right.
I will listen to you. If you ask me questions, what do you think? And I will say, okay, well, whatever. I'll give my personal opinion. I always try to keep it to a minimum and then ask you, what do you think? You're the person who is challenged right now. And at the same time, instead of cutting you off while you're trying to explain yourself, I'm just going to sit and listen and we take turns. Now, if I have something I feel you should be doing, for example, if I feel, I think you should really get in a call with your therapist really soon, or I feel that maybe you need to go to the hospital, I would like for you to hear me, not just jump in and say, but I don't want to do that. Or I would like for you to sit and just absorb what I'm telling you. And ultimately, at the end of the call, it's up to you how you move forward. So that's one of the ways. And
Mhm.
it's like I said, with the program, it's just so much more because we're answering questions about ourselves as children. We're answering questions about now. We're remembering things, but not just bad things. That's the thing. When people think about shadow work, they think, oh my God, this is just going to be trauma. It's not. I have people who are saying, I remembered something from my childhood that is so pertinent to me right now, that is so important for me, that it actually is making me feel a lot better. And that's what I work to do. I work to get you to a point where you take all of column A, which is the good stuff, and all of column B, and you say, okay, I'm going to look through these columns right now, both of them, and see which one I would rather keep. Because a lot of people will choose column B. They want to feel all that negativity. They're used to it. And column A is where you could say, okay, I'm taking this thing out of column B. Maybe I'll slip it into column A a little bit. I feel like that's going to infect it. You know how when you have dryer sheets and they come out of the clothes come out and it smells? Well, it just took that one dryer sheet, right?
That's
So
right.
we're not going to take the negativity and we're going to put it in there. We're going to take negativity and we're going to surround it only with positivity. It's not
Right.
just positivity though, it's love for yourself. Because you guys get homework in my program too. It's all self-love,
Really?
self-care.
What kind of homework? Just an
It's
example.
okay. So I give questions every week. I give questions, and you have to answer them. You don't have to answer them overnight, but take a few days, answer them, and then we go over them in our sessions. Now, the homework is not really for me; it's for you. It's for you to look at them and say, you know what? I'll give you an example. One of the questions I ask is, tell me about a time when you were mean to someone when you were a kid.
Okay.
And I have, a lot of people in the groups have been like, I have forgotten about this. And we work through it. We talk about it. Like, how do you feel about that? What happened? And then you start to figure out whether or not this is something you did because you were being treated this way or because you wanted attention, whatever the case may be. There's a reason for everything we do. Um, and then the other homework is every Saturday, and we should be doing this every single day, but every Saturday I tell them, I want to know what you did today for self-love and self-care. And self-care, is doing something for yourself like going to the gym or getting a massage or eating ice cream, whatever it is that makes you feel good physically. And the self-love is speaking to yourself in a way that is, I guess, conducive to feeling better. So I used to have this habit of calling myself an idiot because I used to be called an idiot. So, growing up, and by not by just my parents, but my one of my spouses who was abusive. So I
Okay.
have been a victim of domestic violence. And one of the things they would tell me was I was good for nothing, I was worthless, and that I was an idiot. And there were other names that I won't bring up, but I had gotten to the habit of using that word all the time. You're such an idiot. I am such an idiot. And now, because I realize my daughter's listening and other people are listening, I say, I am such a genius. You know, it doesn't matter what I did. I spilled water. I am such a genius. Because now I'm going to have to clean that carpet. You know what I mean? So I'm
Mhm.
putting a different spin on it. And my daughter
Absolutely.
sees it. Yeah, she sees it. And she's getting into the habit now of doing this for herself. So, wow, I dropped that glass. You know what? It's okay. It served its purpose. Now I've got to sweep up the floor. It happens. Things
It,
happen to us. That's it.
I'm so glad that you're saying this because Remember the old saying that some people still use to this day: "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt." I'm not a proponent of violence, but I wish I could find a person that came up with that so I can bop them. I just want to bop that person, just put them in the head, like give them a nugget
Yeah.
or thump 'em or something like
Yeah.
that, because that was so wrong. And we know words have killed more people than all the wars in the history of mankind.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just amazing when I think about stuff like that and flipping that around from idiot to genius and saying, hey, it was an accident. Nobody died. Nobody lost a appendage. Nobody had to go and be hospitalized in intensive care. Life goes on. The
Yeah.
sun
It
is going to
does.
rise and fall. All of these things. Like the earth is still going to rotate on its axis 24 hours a day. Let's keep it going. It's you got one life. Let's just keep it going. And
Well,
so,
I wanted to mention that part of the reason I do group setting
mm,
is because sometimes people don't have a friend to go to. And when you enter into the group, I encourage relationships, friendships.
okay,
I encourage collabs. So I say, "Oh, did you know this person was a copywriter? And I know you were looking for someone to help you." So I will,
networking.
yeah, I do it.
That's
And
genius.
but I'm surrounded by loving people. I have my children, I have my friends, I have really good friends, and I have a partner who supports me and says to me on a day-to-day basis, "You're an amazing woman. You are a wonderful woman." He knows that I don't like hearing the whole beautiful, and I hear it all the time. And I always tell people, I didn't reach 51 without knowing how pretty I am. I would love a different type of compliment. And he does that. He always tells me, "You're so intelligent. You're so something like, you're funny." And that I like to hear I'm funny. So, and it's,
One of,
it's a challenge.
that's awesome. Daniel,
Yeah,
her fiance is a guy named Daniel, and Daniel is just a terrific guy, just
he is.
all possible. I can't wait to meet you guys in person.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that too, because, and this is not off topic, but it's
Yeah.
important because when we're talking about domestic violence, when we're talking about sexual trauma, again, words matter. And there have been times where I've talked to people who were victimized, who have survived one of these traumas, and that was said to them all the time. And it makes them physically ill. They want to vomit every time. I have had patients who became bulimic, anorexic, developed eating disorders and disorder eating. I interviewed a lady a month ago who talked, and she's a subject matter expert on disorder eating and eating disorders. And we talked about how her eating disorder started after she was traumatized. I've had patients who were suicidal because they had an eating disorder, because they were a survivor of a sexual trauma or domestic abuse. And so when you're talking about the word usage, hearing the word beautiful, I had a lady that said that after she had gotten raped, she was going to do everything she could to not be beautified anymore because the guy doing that assault was making references to her beauty, making reference to her voluptuousness, all of these things. There's a song that I absolutely love by Robert Glasper featuring Music Soul Child and Chrisette Michelle. It's called "Ah Yeah." And the first verse of that is, "I think beauty's overrated."
There you
That's,
go.
it says, "I think beauty's overrated. There's something anyone can be. Attraction, now that's something different. And thankfully, you're both to me."
Yes.
And I always
I like
thought,
that.
that is amazing to
I
break
like
it
that.
down
Yeah.
like that. It's so different. It gives it a whole different connotation and meaning, and it feels better. Like even reciting that verse right now, I'm getting chill bumps because, again, when you think about somebody's outer presence, you don't want to be just saying the same old all the time or
Yeah.
whatever. and you don't know how this is going to make that person feel. You don't know what
Exactly.
that person's gone through. You don't know if that person's been traumatized by someone who threw that at them or whatever. And sometimes, and I'm just talking about guys right now, sometimes when they approach women and that's one of the first things they say, oh, you're so beautiful or whatever, and they wonder why she's snapping on him or like get away from me and all this stuff. You don't know what that word means to her. You're giving it as a compliment, and you could be as honest and not trying to be disrespectful all day long, every day and twice on Sunday. But you gotta understand, you people are not like you.
No.
So I'm glad that you made that reference because it all ties into what we're talking about here.
Well, I'm just gonna say that Daniel does tell me I'm beautiful. It's for
Sure,
me
and
to say to
nothing
hear
wrong
it
with
from
it, right?
him.
Yeah.
I do get triggered when other people say it, and I haven't learned fully how to accept a compliment. And that's another thing that I really work on. I tell myself when someone says you're pretty or you're smart, just say thank you.
Okay.
And so when I hear him say I'm beautiful, I say thank you, and he knows, he gets it. When he says I'm funny, I tell him a joke. I'm still learning. I have to remember, and it is triggering. It is triggering. There was something I wanted to share, if that was okay, before
The
we're
mic
done.
is yours.
So mental health has been I don't want to say a passion. It has been something that I really work on for myself and for my family. I have a brother who is transgender, and
Okay.
he came out 21 years ago. And I remember at some point there were people watching just to make sure that he was okay. And I have a child who came out as trans 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and I was able to really find ways to express my devotion, my support, and my love for my child. And there were some challenges with our communication. However, I know that I can sit and just listen and let her speak to me. Um, and it's funny because you said, what do you care about appearances? Someone said something very ugly about my child, and I said I could never say that to another person. And it was, I really hope that they change their mind about this transition because they would not make an attractive woman. And it took everything in my power. I'm a Harlem girl. I don't know if I mentioned that.
No,
I
you
was
didn't
raised
mention
in
that.
in Harlem, New York City, and I said, okay.
You
And I said, I don't understand what that has to do with my daughter feeling comfortable in her skin. And who cares? Who
right?
cares?
Who
My
cares?
child is beautiful to me. As long as she's beautiful to herself, I don't care what the world thinks. I don't give a fuck what the world thinks, LP. It's so
I'm the
her
same
mental
way.
health is more
Like,
important. That's it. So
the Harlem World almost came out.
it almost did. It almost
Almost
did.
came out.
And I'm proud of where I grew up. I'm proud of who I am. Being autistic has its challenges in everything. And people assume because I'm from Harlem, oh, first, well, you don't have a Spanish accent because it's Spanish Harlem. And then I have to stop. It's that pause, I stop. Well, I was raised in America. Harlem is still in America.
I
So,
mean, oh my God, like who knew?
and and then there's so much more. I have challenges with this because at first I was raised to react, and but my brain never understood certain things. It's still to this day I have challenges not learning but comprehending things the way you would.
Okay,
And so my tarot, my spirits, they help me with understanding things a little bit better. And Daniel's gotten to the point where if I can't understand things, he will search for a way to explain it to me
okay,
just so that I understand. So what I endeavor to do with my clients is I have ways of reading the tarot and explaining to them, and even during the sessions, just I find a way to communicate. And it's so important that in any situation, if someone is struggling, we find a way to communicate and listen with them. listen to them and listen with them to what is
Absolutely.
being said on both ends. So that was
For
it.
like, no, that's awesome because what came to my mind is Mrs. LP is a very literal person. Like, it is what you say, and that's it, or whatever. And
That's me.
I'm not as I'm not as literal. So and we've been married now 3 years, and
Hmm.
so I have to remember that about her when I'm having communication with her because sometimes I'm more loose with not necessarily words, but with what I'm saying, and not
Yep.
loose in terms of lying or whatever. I'm saying like if I say I'm going to the store at 3 o'clock to get some milk.
You better be
She
on your way at three
expected me to
o'clock.
be at the store or leaving the house at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
If it's, if I leave earlier or whatever, that's not necessarily a problem. But if it's after that, it's like, well, you said you were leaving at such and such time. Like, is everything okay or whatever? I'm like, yeah. Why did you say that? And she was like, oh, because. And I'm like, okay, it was, I left at 3:05 or something like that. Or what? But initially, there used to be a problem with me because it was
Right.
like, what's the big deal? And
Right.
then I thought, you got to know your partner. And I thought about this also. I know of many situations where stuff like that ended up being domestic violence issues. I
Yeah.
know many situations where stuff like that became traumatic. And
Yep.
so domestic violence happens verbally, it happens physically, it happens sexually, it happens financially, it happens emotionally. Like all the spectrum, all the
Yes.
colors of the spectrum, you can throw under domestic violence. Even me being a first responder, all of these mass incidents, these mass shootings and stuff, I throw them under the umbrella of domestic violence because, like you said, yeah, you were born in Harlem, whether it was Spanish Harlem or not, it was still part of America. It didn't
Right.
matter. Same thing happens when you look at these mass incidents or whatever. They all are happening in
They're
America. They're
happening
happening
here.
where we live. We're affected by it just like if it happened
Yeah.
next door or in your house or whatever. So, it's like put your mind outside of the box.
Yep.
And so when we're talking about trafficking, when we're talking about sexual trauma, when we're talking about domestic violence, for a practitioner as yourself who's doing a non-traditional modality such as tarot reading, such
Yeah.
as using crystals,
Hmm.
your daughter is actually someone who has this metaphysical ability too. I want you to talk about your business and how you go about guiding her through all the trials and tribulations as she's learning and developing because she's only 10.
Yeah.
And when I say
So
only 10, I'm just talking about an age. I'm not talking
in
about
age, yeah. Well, so Luna is also on the spectrum. I have three children on the spectrum, very, very high functioning. There are quirks. And I realized when I was diagnosed that I can proudly say now, you get that from mom.
okay,
There was such a stigma to being autistic or having Asperger's. And, my children were ashamed at first. And I said, no, there's no reason to be. You are you, and you
right,
are perfect as you are. And now I know you get it from me.
okay.
So all that quirkiness, all that weirdness, and I love the word weird. We're all weird to
We're
some
all
degree.
weird.
We're all weird. Weird was created in the 14th century to describe a person who takes control and impacts their own destiny.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So now Luna knows all these things. She would come home crying because the other children would make fun of her. She doesn't like the same things all the girls like. She likes video games and she doesn't like dolls. She likes stuffed animals and she likes to read. And they would say, "Oh, you're so weird." And I would tell her, "Yes, you are weird. Yes, you are. Own it.
And that's
Uh,
fine.
That's it. That's it. Own it." So as far as the business, her friends were like, "Well, why would you want to sell crystals?" Now, Luna's had this love for, and this is her words, crystals, rocks, and shiny objects since she could crawl. She never crawled, but since she could move around, I would take her to the park and come home and she would have them in her fist. And you know how hard, how strong a baby is? You have to like pry the fingers open.
Yeah.
And I would find pebbles or rocks and I would get rid of them. And this would be a tantrum. So she started realizing she could hide them in her shoes, her socks, her pants, her diaper, and I would find rocks. And so her, when she got older, it made sense that she would ask me, "Can you buy me a crystal?" And I would buy crystals. So her wanting to sell them, it made so much sense. And she is my guide as much as I am hers. We're both learning how to run a business. I have no business skills except for what I've taught myself and I have acquired through friendships and collaborations. And it's been really, really great for us. She heard somebody say something about merch last year. So we hired someone to create a logo for us. It was a picture, beautiful picture.
Okay.
And yeah, earlier this year, I created a t-shirt and it's up on a third party site. So, you order through them and it's got our logo. So she that's all she wanted, merch. I want coffee mugs. We got coffee mugs. I want a t-shirt. We got t-shirts. Unfortunately, I don't have anything here. We have hoodies and face masks, and that's part of what she wanted to do. She wanted for everyone to know who she is, La Petite Lune. And that's French for the little moon. That's what we
Oh,
call our shop. Yeah. So now, as far as the crystals, Luna says she feels something from them. She never said energy. She would say, "I feel them." And I knew that it was energy. Yeah. Well, there's the page La Petite Lune Crystals on Instagram. It's separate from my tarot page.
okay.
And she makes her own videos, LP. She creates the videos for all the merchandise. She uploads them herself on Instagram and over on TikTok. And she creates her own memes.
Okay.
So she's guiding me in certain ways that I never even thought. Like she'll create a video and she'll show me and I'll say, "How did you do that?" And she'll say, "Mommy, it's too complicated to explain to you." But and I'll say, "Well, was it complicated to do?" "No, no, it was easy. It was easy for her." So I just say, "Okay, all right, just do you." And as far as the crystals, she can feel them. There are times we will take some in our pockets or my handbag or a backpack and just wherever we go. And she has told people, she's telling "Mommy, take a crystal out." And she'll grab one and she'll walk over to a stranger and put it in their hand and say, "I feel like you needed this today."
That's awesome.
And I say, "Well, what was it?" And sometimes it's pink, it's rose quartz, and she'll say, "I think that they were really sad and they really needed to love themselves. So I gave them rose quartz." Another time, she saw a gentleman sitting in the park and he was sitting there on the phone and she was listening. I wasn't. I was reading a book. And she came to me, she says, "Do we have any labradorite?" And I said, "Yes, I have labradorite." And I gave her one and she gave it to the man and he said, "What's this?" And she panicked. She's autistic and she doesn't know how to talk to strangers really. So I came over and I said, "Well, she wanted to gift you something." And he says, "Oh, can you tell me about it?" And he spoke to her. He was looking at her, which I love. And she said, "It's a stone of transformation and it's magical." And he said, "Transformation." And he says, "Can I tell you something, Mom?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "I have been struggling so much and wanting to move past something. And I feel like I needed this right now." So that's what she does. She does it. And, I don't just do it with my work, with my extensive work. She can do it just by seeing a person and saying that person needs this. Um, so we're each other's guides.
I love that story. And Luna she's a chip off the old block,
It's
She
something.
she is something else. And I'm telling you, I just want to thank you
Oh,
for
thank you.
educating us and enlightening us and telling us and teaching us how the work that you do is so valued for people who have been victimized, who have survived trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual trauma. Marcella, it has been an amazing, amazing interview. I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you because we're going to put all that information
Okay.
on our links in the show notes. And so,
Yes.
how can people either purchase the crystals from you? And I on the screen here for those that'll be watching, I have her business page as well as her Instagram page up on the screen outside of the logo. How can people get in touch with you
So
for readings and all that?
for reading, okay, so the page with a picture of Luna and I together, that is where you can find out about the program that I run. It's the inner child healing. It's called the Magical Inner Child.
Okay.
And you can also access my booking page for tarot readings.
Okay.
Now we're building a site for her crystals, but I'm going to be uploading them also because that's my that there is called a Squarespace. So I'm going to
Yes.
be uploading pictures to the square of some of the crystals. We'll be
Okay.
opening up an Etsy shop. She will continue to do lives on her Instagram page, which is called La Petite Lune Crystals. It should be linked to my Instagram. Um, I have to make that happen. So it should be linked there. And that's where we do the crystals, and that's where the link is for her merchandise too. So if you like the logo and you want a coffee mug or a t-shirt, it's there.
Okay.
And I can be found on Clubhouse, where I run rooms on various topics, and Wisdom, where I do the same thing. I love the Wisdom app. And Facebook. I'm building a community on Facebook. So as soon as that's up and running, you'll find those links in here, and hopefully my 10K card and my link tree.
What's your 10K card?
You know what? I don't remember. I don't remember it, but it's there somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's linked in somewhere, and I can send that to you too.
Yeah, I have it. And so what I'll do is I'll put your 10K information in there because that
Okay.
has the links to your IG. It has the
Mm-hmm.
link to your La Petite Luna site
Yep.
and others. And so we'll have that. We'll just probably just have that one link in there because that's kind of like has access to everything
Yep.
else.
Yeah.
I got one question for you before we wrap up.
Okay.
And this is a end question that I don't ask everybody. I try to remember asking everybody, and it's the same question.
Okay.
If Marcella could write a letter or an email to her younger self, what would she say?
That's not fair. That's part of my program. We answer that question. If I could write a letter to my younger self, I would say, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. That's it.
That's it. I love that. Just nice and simple. It's going to be okay. Marcella, I want to thank you for being on the Trigger One to Talk
Thank
podcast.
you.
I'll see you in these clubhouse
Yeah.
streets.
Yeah.
Give my love and blessings to Luna and my brother Daniel.
I will. I
I
will.
just want to say thank you again, folks.
Thank you.
Stop, get out of this negative thoughts about tarot and crystals and all this stuff. We're not talking about demonology. We're not talking about devil worship and all this stuff. This is actually helping survivors of trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual based offenses. With that, I want to thank you again. You're always welcome to come back
Thank you.
anytime. Peace and blessings be upon
Thank
you. I
you.
got to jump into this missing person case, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Take care. Thanks, LP.
Talk to you later. So that was Marcella Gonzalez. And again, folks, I like doing stuff different. You know how I am. I want to jump into this last piece before we end the show. We always cover a missing person case. And I don't have a video for this particular case, but I do want to share the information for everyone. This is a young lady. Her name is DAIJAH Beckham. DAIJAH Beckham. This is from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Mrs. LP gave me this information, and I'll have the link to this particular information in the show notes. Her name is DAIJAH Beckham. The NCMEC number is 1444433. Again, 1 quadruple 4 33. She's been missing since February 15th of 2022. She's been missing from Atlanta, Georgia. Her date of birth is January 21st, 2005. She's a black female. Hair color is black. Eye color is listed as other. She's listed at 5'5" tall, at 186 pounds. Don't have a lot of information on her. It just says that both photos, and this is for the people that are watching it, but for the audio portion, you can click on this link and you can see the missing persons photo. Both photos are shown of DAIJAH. She has a tattoo of Roman numerals on her chest and a black rose on her left shoulder. Again, she has a tattoo of Roman numerals on her chest and a black rose on her left shoulder. If you have any information, please contact 911 or call 1-800-843-5678 or 1-800-THE-LOST. Or you can contact the Atlanta Police Department at 1-404-614-6544. I want to thank you all for joining the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. I'm your host, LP, and with that, peace and blessings be upon you all forevermore.